Perez is with Humane World for Animals, which used to be HSUS, and she's going to give a brief introduction. We have Amanda, Chris, come on up. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. I mean, when we talk about equine and animal welfare, there is the human philosophical aspect. There is the lack of veterinarians, lack of resources, lack of funding. So it's a whole lot of, and then the cultural, the social, the philosophical. And we're living in an era when it's getting worse. So that's just the reality. So Chelsea, you're up. Chelsea.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Let everybody come up first.
And Karla is with Street Dog Coalition. So homeless, unhoused, they're with their dogs and pets 24/7. But it's the same issue of access to care when you have mental challenges and mental issues. Access to care takes on a completely different approach and philosophy. So I'm gonna get everybody to here to go. Yes, come on. Why don't you briefly, Amanda too, introduce yourselves, and then Chelsea's going to open on Humane World for Animals. Amanda, why don't you start? Just introduce yourself.
Oh, yes.
Brief introduction. Just who are you?
I'm Minervini, professor at Karla McCullough, and I run a little equine nonprofit organization called Equine-Guided Learning and Hearing Experience. Yes, Equine-Guided Learning and Hearing Experience, equine-assisted education.
My name is Chris Mason. I'm a hoof care practitioner, professional, and in recent years I've been more involved in education than actual practice. I specialize specifically in issues like laminitis, boundary rehabilitation, a lot of the key buzzwords we have in our profession. Usually when I do presentations, I have some sort of PowerPoint. I'm talking about all of the soft tissue, the vascular system, the neurosystem, the feet, et cetera, et cetera. Janice spoke to me about this 5-6 months ago, about maybe coming to this presentation. I realized once I saw what the theme was, that wouldn't have been a problem. Then all of a sudden, only about a month ago, I had a revelation. What this is intensely about what I do and the challenges that I am facing, and a lot of us are facing. So, man, I jumped in, and she said, "Yeah, you can come." So I'm really glad to be here.
Why don't we go to Karla, and then you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm Karla McCullough. I am a volunteer with an organization by the name of Street Dog Coalition. We provide pop-up clinics for the homeless population here in Missoula.
Wonderful. And I'm Chelsea Perez. I'm actually just going to stand so that we can play this one. I'm with Humane World for Animals. We were formerly Humane Society of the United States, and our programs have worked with a lot of you in the past. In February, we rebranded under Humane World for Animals to bring together our international group, which was Humane Society International, together with our Humane Society of the United States, which is an organization that's been around since 1952. So my role within the organization is equine protection, so I'm exclusively equine. We do have many other areas within our organization that touch on equine, from our animal rescue team, we have animals in sanctuary, so we have around 700 horses in sanctuary between 2 different facilities. And we do law enforcement training through our law enforcement team. We have our animal cruelty team that does investigations, and We do help facilitate large rescues, disaster scenarios, but it is through the work with many of the other amazing organizations that exist, including many in this room. So I just wanted to play this little video for everybody, which is it's just a quick little video, but I know everybody here are filmmakers, and I just think this is adorable. And it was our brand launch video that we did in February, so it introduces you to our brand, Humane World for Animals.
Climbing up on Salisbury Hill, I could see the city light. My heart going boom, boom, boom. Hey, you said, grab your things, I want to take you home. Come on, take me home, back home. Come on, take me home.
You don't have to be a VIP to get all these savings with Geico. Every customer gets 24/7 fast track.
So that was our beautiful little video, and that was a really collective effort from the puppets that we pulled together, from the videographers, from the whole team. It was just an amazing team of people that pulled that video together, so I was excited to share it. I am hosting this evening a reception, which I hope you can all join. And I do have another little video that we'll get to a little bit later that's on Tennessee walking horses. So our campaign, Equine Protection Campaign, focuses on federal legislation. So I have three main bills that I work on. One is the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act, which brings in national doping anti-doping legislation to the United States. It was passed in 2020 with the anti-doping portion implemented in 2023. Since that program has been in place, we have seen a dramatic drop in deaths from racehorses on American tracks. So early still, we still are dealing with a lot of compliance, a lot of challenges to the law, but it is early indicators are good, and so that is one key area I work. The other area that I work is supporting the SAFE Act, which is the Save America's Forgotten Equines, to end the permanently banned slaughter in the United States and the export to slaughter. So that's another one of my main bills. The other one is the Horse Protection Act. The Horse Protection Act is a piece of legislation, one of the largest pieces of animal welfare national legislation in the United States. And it was intended to end the soaring of Tennessee walking horses. And we won't have a video this evening because we're going to be on the rooftop for our evening together. But I really did want to introduce you a little bit because I know we have a lot of visual learners in the audience. So I wanted to introduce you to what soaring is, and then not to use this panel today because we have a lot of other things going on. But just so you can see the visual, and then tonight we will have a Q&A on the Tennessee walking horse. So I'm going to get you a link that we can play, but we'll do that. We'll do the video at the end, and we'll get on with this panel now.
So everybody can come, yeah, panel come back. Karla, are you comfortable beginning? Because it's like basic. We live in the streets, we have pets. What's going on? What's the situation? How are we addressing it?
So again, just an overview. Street Dog Coalition provides free veterinary care for the pets of the homeless. The homeless population, and I can only speak here in Missoula, is growing by leaps and bounds. And a lot of that population, a lot of them have pets. A lot of them were not homeless 6 months ago. So we're trying to help both ends of the leash, if you will. I have heard the argument of if they're homeless, they shouldn't have pets. I've also seen people who have not committed suicide because they have a dog or a cat that they need to take care of. And that's what we're trying to do. Even people that, okay, well, let's provide shelter. A lot of the shelters do not allow pets. So what happens to the pets? They're out roaming. Someone else picks them up. So we at Street Dogs are trying to provide the veterinary care that most of the homeless population cannot afford. Even some of the non-homeless population can afford anymore with the vet care. And we also try to provide compassion and be non-judgmental with the person on the other side of the leash, which is often very, very big. It's very humbling. So that's what we do. Are we making strides? I'm telling you, some days it doesn't feel like it, but hopefully we are. We're touching some people. We just need to keep going, and that's what we do.
Talk about what the need is here locally. You were talking about space.
Yeah, so we, Street Dogs, we partner with the Poverello Center, which is our homeless shelter here in Missoula. We used to have 2 homeless shelters. The Johnson Street shelter is where we would set up in the winter, because here in Montana, we are in Montana in the winter. It was an indoor facility. That shelter has since closed, which has manifested in many ways. Now we have more homeless on the streets with more pets that don't have a place to go. Our other homeless shelter does not allow pets, so we're dealing with that. Again, currently, we set up at the Poverello Center and we set up outside to do our monthly clinics. Come October, we have had our first snow in October in Montana many times. So we're looking for an indoor facility where we can set up our clinics, which we provide vaccines. We give out spay-neuter certificates. We do wellness checks for the dogs. We try to have a separate area for the cats because the cats freak out because the dogs are freaking out. So the need is great. We need space, we need funds, we need volunteers to keep doing what we're doing. We're getting there. We're not going to give up. We're not going to give up.
I have a question. You might have said you guys go directly to, like, in Helena, for example, now that the laws have changed and you're not allowed to sleep, you know, inside city limits on the streets, there's a growing encampment of unhoused people just outside of town.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question is like, do you guys go to those places, or do they have to come to you to receive those services?
We used to go to those places. We are limited because we're a volunteer organization. The veterinarians that work with us work Monday through Friday. Some of them go in on Saturday. So we do not do that anymore. There are organizations with the Poverello Center that do go out to those encampments and can spread the news. Well, this is what you need to do. You can go to a street dog clinic. We try to keep it somewhat within a certain area because most of our population doesn't have transportation. We've arranged with the mayor, who has been lovely, to allow transportation on Saturdays on the bus if they say, we're going to a street dog coalition, which has been wonderful.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But no, we currently don't. We just don't have the manpower to do that.
Is that a need you would want, or is that like a desire you guys have?
Sure. There's a lot of people that don't make it in, and that I'm sure we could touch. But again, it's just manpower. We just don't have the resources to do that.
Karla, thank you. Chris, would you like to?
You know, when I decided to come here, I had no idea what I was going to talk about. I didn't really until about 15, 20 minutes ago. Everything I've seen so far today just dovetails perfectly with the issues that people like myself face in animal care, horse care. And when I started into my profession late in life, like many people that come into a holistic point of view on health care for horses, in my case, we came into it because there was a need. Almost everybody that you talk to that's into hoof care, well, they had a horse that foundered. Nobody could do anything about it. People spent thousands of dollars on veterinary care with no result whatsoever. And luckily you run into somebody, an outlier, that taught you there's different ways of doing things. And that's how I got into it, and I was able to bring a horse 100% back just by following some alternative methods. And I learned about how to do that. A neighbor had a horse that foundered. I did that. For 2 years, I just started doing more and more and more cases, all pro bono, never charged a nickel. And the good thing about providing care like that on a pro bono basis is, hey, you can experiment. You can try all sorts of things. You're not limited to the financial boundaries that you might have with traditional veterinary care, that kind of thing. So that's how I got into this, and eventually I literally worked from Montana to Arizona to California. I travel around. I've got a living quarters horse trailer I travel in. I'll pull into a rodeo grounds or fairgrounds, hang out there for a while. People start seeing the sign on my truck, and before you know it, people are saying, can you come help me with this horse? And I finally decided I would just start teaching clinics. And not in big cities. I want to go to the smallest little towns where nobody ever goes to spread education or help like this. And my clinics are generally all free. It's all comers, bring your horses, we'll talk about things. And what I've learned is that the people that have horses from all different parts of the horse community are becoming more and more and more confused about how to provide good care for their animals, because the healthcare industry, or maybe I should say world or universe, is so incredibly fragmented into little pieces, and every one of those little pieces are at war with everybody else. There's so much destructive ego in the humans that are harming the animals. And what I try to do is stimulate discussion, do education, where we can possibly break down these barriers between the different types of practitioners. And the only way that I've learned that you can make changes, it is never from above down. It starts with every single one of you sitting here today demanding, coming up. And years ago when I was in college, I had a seminar with, I don't know if there's old enough people here that the name Studs Terkel will mean anything to you. But anyway, I spent some time with Studs. He was a journalist from Chicago, one of the hardcore, like muckraker type of journalists. And he said, there's only one thing I want you folks to leave with the time you spent with me, is you've got to learn to ask the most impertinent question in life. Why? He says, you ask why to every single answer that anybody gives to you. And when I teach, I have my own methods. I used to be very focused on like barefoot trimming, that kind of thing. That's a bunch of baloney. You've got to use pieces from every different alternative. I am a thief. I am a dirty, rotten thief, because if I go in and there's somebody that I disagree with, I'm not going to go in and fight with them. My way's better. I'm going to sit there and listen. What can I steal from you? I may not agree with you, but there's something that I'm going to steal and take away. And that's what I try to encourage people to do by asking the question, why? And if I ever, if maybe I'll talk to some of you folks in the course of the next couple of days, I might give advice about how I think you should approach various issues. Never would I want you to believe what I say. I want you to listen to what I say, and then you can compare it with somebody else and somebody else. I'm just giving my experience. But the last thing I want is to have the Chris Mason technique. And we fought with the, I'm about ready to finish here. Used to be the battle was between the holistic hoof care practitioners and standard farriers. Steel shoes versus barefoot, or now we use plastic shoes, that sort of thing. We've kind of come to a point where we agree to disagree. The real antagonistic battles right now is within the holistic hoof care. As everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame. So they're going to put together their way, that this is the way you trim a hoof or something. Somebody else, two of the most, these are friends of mine, but the most prolific hoof care practitioners in America today are 180 degrees apart, just hitting heads. And everybody has their cults and their following like this, you know, and all it does is just contribute to confusion. And that goes to the horses that we work with. So my mission is to break down these barriers. Don't fall for anybody's rave. People are always asking me, well, who is the best person to deal with these problems? And I say, I'm looking at them. And my when I take clients on, unless there's an absolute physical impossibility that they can't do the work, I want that client to learn to do all of their own work, and it's possible. This is not some kind of brain surgery or anything like that. And I judge my success with a client or with a horse on how soon I'm dispensable. They never need me again. And when they never need me, they never call me, I'm successful in that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I'm going to stand up because obviously I can't talk if I don't move. Thank you, everybody. I'm really grateful for being here. Thank you, Janet, for your incredible work. And thank you to the horses, because I am here thanks to them. And especially to my main Equine-Guide that I'm going to introduce very soon. This is Jimmy. So my work is a little different here. You're going to slide? Okay. To introduce us, Jimmy, Equine-Guide, thoroughbred of the track, and complicated history with his background. He was considered one of those dangerous horses just because he was a stallion on the track, and that's all he was, just a horse on the track that needed some time to recover, and that's how I learned a lot from him. And me, I was brought in Italy. I came up to the United States somehow, and then horses brought me here. I'm working on a book on horses and relationships. Slide. So I have some small collaborators, and a few pictures here, and slide. There is a new entry. She was born, she's been basically perfect for this program. I found her, she was gonna go at an auction, and she has a mouth defect, and I wasn't sure she would be successful going to an auction, so I just kind of stopped her, and I didn't have any more money for more horses to just take care of myself. And so I found a donor, so she's fully sponsored for the program. Yes. Slide. So actually, so this is a whole gang because so I bring students to the ranch, but I also bring horses to campus. And these are very portable. They love going to places. And actually, that's a baby people over there. That's my classroom. So you went into the elevator, third floor of Armstrong Hall, Colorado College in Colorado Springs. And no, that's okay. You can stay. Yeah, it's fine. We're gonna go. So yeah, what's about horses? Yeah, you can click because there is some text coming out here. Also, even the length of our relationship is debated, 4,000, 6,000 years. But what we know is that we are extremely fascinated, as it's demonstrated in music, art, petroglyphs. But also my question is, okay, so they're good for us, but how can we be good for them? And what's in for them when we interact with them? That's my primary worry. I want everybody to be happy, basically. Slide. So I am talking today. I know this is a very mixed audience. We have scholars, researchers, horse lovers of any kind and different backgrounds. But so one of the idea is one welfare. This is not my idea. It's been researched at the moment. And if you think through zoo anthropological lenses of the fact that we have co-evolved with lots of different non-human animals, it's also interesting to. Well, I'll say it more later, but then what can a common welfare look like? And so I'm going to talk about just quickly, I'm going to throw some seeds and be also brief because I know I'm standing between you guys and lunch. But this is like a overview, positive interaction, the 5 domains, what could be mutual, successful mutual communication, and just a very, very tiny example from my Equine-Guided learning and hearing experience and slide. So we're mammals and we know that we have some common needs. And so for instance, an issue for both us and horses in this colonial capitalistic environment is that we are locked in stalls or offices, and I need to move, and I actually let my students move in class, and by any means if you need to stretch or move, please do, feel free. I don't know why we're all sitting down in the room today. And actually, also we have Rupert Isaacson here. I'm a big fan of his work because I think that trust systems, going back to herd living and understanding also how to, I don't want to say build herds, but let horses build their herds successfully. And also for humans, horse-boy movement method. I'm not very proficient in the method yet, but I'm a fan and a supporter. I enrich my classroom as well as we should enrich horse environments with all sorts of games, balls and squishy balls. Slide. We know about the 5 domains, and here I'm going to go fast because I thought I had more time, but I wrote a little history of the 5 domains that comes from New Zealand, and it's based on the 5 freedoms. And here the association has created this beautiful picture that probably you guys are all familiar with. But then what's interesting to me is that finally the 5 domains have also included mental state, and then only recently did mental state include horses and human interaction, so that we are actually very responsible for the positivity of this exchange. Slide. Yeah, so here you can see that they're side by side, both based on Meller work, Dr. Meller and slide. And here, because of the focus on positive interactions that are reciprocal, I wrote some quotations where you can see that there are many people who have been reflecting, and mostly in the last 10 years since it was added to the domains. And the ones that don't have a quote immediately are from equine-assisted counseling. Okay. So in what I do, I try to assist with interpreting how positive interactions may happen, since my students mostly don't have any experience with horses. am sort of translator. I know the equine guides. I try to understand them and what they are suggesting, and I model some behavior that other students are picking up. And so these are some of the ideas that I bring into my work. Slide. I also have quite a bit of a theoretical background because I'm an academic in the humanities, so we like critical theory, and I put together really different stuff. And also, this is my colleague, a veterinarian. He's a philosopher and veterinarian, Roberto Marchesini. He has lots of interesting books translated into English on, for instance, animal creativity is the last one. And we are writing our book together. I don't know how I scored this, but I did. And actually, it wasn't me; it was Jimmy, because they came to Colorado to give a talk. And then they said, hey, let's go to the ranch. And they just liked my work, and we decided to start working together. So that's funny, because nobody knows me in Italy, and I'm nobody here or there. But somehow, through my horse, I'm getting a little, and I have occasion to, work with different people. Slide. Also, okay, I'm an educator, so that's what I actually studied. And what I'm doing, I'm trying to bridge, really, attune the consensual co-creation of horsemanship with decent teaching. And so my realization while I was working on both is that if you teach well, it's the same principle, so teaching well and being a good person for horses, there is a lot in common there. So actually, Ted Hooks is one of my models for education, and actually we discuss supremacy and speciesism in my work. But also, she has a lot of work on love, and academics do not like to talk about love. But my friend Rupert Isaacson does, and so you give me kind of the courage to, as an academic, talk about love as well. And in the way that she thinks about love, not as a feeling, but it's an active practice, I actually made a connection with the 5 domains. Slide. And then, there was another one before? Oh yeah, that's okay. So these are some other approaches, and I'm not going to talk about all of them. If you want, we can chit-chat later. Slide. So a session is structured, there is a structure, so there is a training that I do with students, whether they're mine or my colleagues. I go to class and I introduce a little bit some facts about horses and how they think and see things differently. And then I have a questionnaire where I ask them about their experience with horses and sort of current moods. And then a session, actually I don't plan it because it depends on the horses. Typically we approach the herd and we see which horses come walk to us. And if they don't, then we work with dogs to do other things. But so far it has never happened that they haven't walked. And actually I have had horses in the same herd as some of the equine guides who are not part of the program because they're not mine and I don't work with them. Very curious and they want to see what we're doing. They actually all come to the gate. I think that then the equine guides go back and tell them that they had fun. Yeah, so slide. Yeah, Jimmy's a ham, obviously. So this is a story. So we're talking about charm. So significant human-animal relational moment, the charm. What happened was, so I prepared them, and I also asked them, please wear, boots, cover your toes, don't be around the hoofies with your naked feet. So this student of mine, very brilliant, she forgot, just looking at the time, 10 minutes, okay. And so I had to ask her to watch the session from outside the arena. And so we all stood in the arena. It was maybe 10 students. And the guide was Jimmy. Jimmy decided to leave everybody and actually go to her and interact with her over the fence. And when I ran the questionnaire, she also was interviewed for a short documentary that my students made. It was here last year. And really had a lot of feelings to express, to share after, because the equine guide had actually perceived their emotions of being left out. And he went to her and included her, and she felt seen and included, and it was great for her. So it's such a tiny thing, but also it shows that we could learn more from horses, being mindful of what's happening around us. And sometimes we get so distracted and caught up and nervous that we don't notice. So I try to teach the students actually to act more like horses. Next slide. So actually, I had it in my notes here. I didn't know that Dr. Dyson was going to be here, but I had in my notes that I wanted to mention because I'm also a big fan of her work and how people like you are teaching to look at signs of stress and also the materials that you have produced is available to everybody. I show it to my students. Thank you. To become better at doing what horses do, which is look at us and understanding what's going on. So the ethogram, very, very important tool. And I'm not a vet, I wish I was, but I try to learn from you guys. I also try to learn from trimmers.
You learned from them first, right?
Huh?
You learned from the farriers first, right?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, farrier, no, trimmer, barefoot. Yeah, anyway. Here, in the idea for one welfare, if we think about us not as individuals and animals separated, but as interspecies relations. I'm bringing the ball here because in my field, I mean, there's a lot that we can say philosophically. The car was very bad for human-animal relationships, and the ball was very good. There has been a misinterpretation also of Darwin and the survival of the fittest. It's a really gross misreading. We do some of these readings with my students as well. But actually, if only we can maybe understand more the biological rules of empathy and how a species that collaborate actually tend to be successful than the ones, or the individual within species that compete. Maybe we could create a better society by recognizing our shared capacity. So cultivating empathy, right?
So one of the things that I want to touch on is there are so many people in this room that are elevating our understanding of horses and our interactions with horses. And where our organization comes in is to stamp out the cruelest practices. Let's see now. Is to end the cruelest practices. And some of these practices are, we have all these people in this room who are talking about these studies to really highlight and showcase the unique nature of horses. And on the other end of the spectrum, we're also working to stop the very cruelest practices that happen to horses. And in the United States, I've been in the US for over a decade now, but I come from Canada originally, which also has issues with welfare and laws. But the US is very different in that, and all of you who work on the ground know that from state to state, your access is very different, your animal welfare laws are very different, and your culture, that one. We'll just pause it for now. And your culture is very different surrounding how horses fit into your society, how they're kept, how your trainers interact with horses. There's just a lot of diversity across the United States as it relates to horses. And then within that, on native tribes as well, where you have, you have this national laws and things that create differences as well, and then within that from tribe to tribe. But what ends up happening is that leaves the nonprofits being the ones that are really on the ground creating laws, drafting laws, and passing legislation in order to protect animals. So our organization works to collectively with other leading animal organizations such as ASPCA and Animal Welfare Institute. I don't see Joanna here yet, but she is coming. So she's from Animal Welfare Institute, wonderful. So make sure you connect with her when she does come. and many of you in this room to pass and ensure that our laws reflect how we feel about horses, and they reflect the relationship that we have with them. So we have a lobbying arm that works federally on federal legislation, which is a separate sort of 501c4 organization. And we also have state directors that work within the states that work on local and national and state level legislation to pass laws and certain various lawsuits. And so as it comes to, like you were saying about bringing dogs and street dogs, one of the things that we may work on is ensuring that women who are leaving abusive situations, that the shelter laws allow them to bring their pets with them to shelter, because we're aware that women often will not leave abusive relationships because they won't leave their animals at home. So there needs to be laws to support that. There needs to be laws to support cost of care, so that if your local township ends up seizing horses, that they can ensure that the care of those animals doesn't just fall on the people locally, or that the law enforcement isn't turned off of doing seizures because the cost of care is so high, because there are not laws in place in order to address that. So our organization may come in and collaborate and work with you if you happen to be in an area that has some laws that maybe aren't supporting your welfare, to try and identify ways that we can increase that and make sure that your local laws do reflect what it is you're trying to achieve in your area. One of the big ones that's going on, and we're elevating care so much across so many areas, and this pervasive sort of world just keeps continuing. And one of the ways that we really need to create change is to have individuals like you with a voice who understand horses to come forward to your members of Congress, to come forward to your elected officials, and ask for and demand change in the areas you want to see them. So the Tennessee walking horse, I'm going to show this video. This one isn't too bad. If anybody is interested in sort of harder hitting video footage on this, I have plenty. So I've tried to do light for this audience today, but if you want to go ahead and play it, I'd like to show you.
Without the sewing, without some type of sewing, they're not going to do the big leap.
Thank you all for staying with us through that one. It is incredibly, it's an incredibly abusive, incredibly painful thing that these horses live their whole lives being sored and being shown and being sored and being shown. And one of the most, to me, things that really violate the horses is the work that they go through to evade detection. So there are inspections that are, so USDA is empowered to inspect at horse shows, so there are inspections. But the people who practice these techniques go through these great lengths to ensure that the horses will pass inspection even though they've been sored. And some of them really speak to a lot of the work that a lot of you do, because it's to train the horses, which is a lot of what you saw with the beatings and everything, is to train the horses to not react to pain. So they go through a whole variety of things to ensure that the horses do not react to pain. So in order to determine if the horse has been sored, USDA goes through this whole inspection procedure where they do palpations and inspect the horse's legs. But when you train a horse to not react to pain, it allows them to get through the inspection. And they do a whole number of grotesque things as well in addition to that. But I think for this group, that's one of the areas that you can imagine that a lot of this science, and I was even last night on Dr. Dyson's, Sue's thing was when you are desensitizing horses to neuro things. So I was just in Tennessee, and I watched some of them taking the horses up to inspection, and just prior to the palpation, they're pressing on the point when they're in the line, and I was like, I know exactly what they're doing. They're desensitizing that so that when the horse comes to the inspection, they've been holding that piece for 7 minutes in advance, so when the inspectors palpate, the horse is not so reactive. So that's where the science comes in, that's where the groups come in, that's where all of you come in to help collectively spread the word and help us understand what are the ways that we can support ending this through science, through studies, through film, through all of the things that collectively we work together and do.
What are you encountering now in this political climate? I know that Senator Hester, and some others were helpful, and it looked like you were moving in a direction.
So this is incredibly difficult politically, and as I said, it's been around. The Horse Protection Act was passed in 1970. This is not sort of a new animal welfare agenda that says, we're trying to pass something new. This is just trying to uphold the basic principles of this law that was passed in 1970, and that's been incredibly difficult. But a lot of it stems from the fact that unless you know horses, it's hard to really depict what's going on here. You're just seeing people apply a substance to a horse's leg. You're just saying that this creates pain. When you know horses, you can respond to that and you can react. But if you have a group of people saying, this doesn't hurt them, they're fine, this doesn't hurt them, they don't feel pain, then it's very difficult, because we all know they do, but unless we have the science to support that. And the same thing with the devices that they wear, the big heavy stacks, which I have some with me and I'll show you all this evening. The stacks, the chains, all the devices, and from a farrier perspective, they pare down the soles of the hooves to create intense pain. And they don't even mind if a horse is foundered, because we've had one where we've pulled the shoes and the coffin bone was like poking through the bottom of the hoof. But they're still in the show ring, because that extreme level of pain is what helps with this gait. So the law, trying to explain to lawmakers in especially the contiguous states, so the southern states or some of the states, trying to explain to them that this actually is very painful for the horses, tends to be our word against theirs, and that's where the pain ethogram, the written pain studies, all the pain studies and the science and the actual evidence to support ending these practices and behavioral and...
How big is the money that somebody is gaining by doing this?
It's
a lot of effort to go through if it's not right.
It's like the racehorse industry, right? The triple crown, it's like a gambling.
And with that, because of wastage, if horses are having coffin bones poking through and that foundering here and there, they must also be dying and not able to show anymore. There must be, what's the life capacity of money making for a horse like this? Like, people must be calculating those sums, right?
Yes, for sure. One of the things to keep in mind with Tennessee walking horses and spotted saddle horses is that this is a walk gait. So they have no moment of suspension. So their ability to endure this is remarkable. We also do animal testing investigations, and for animal testing they use beagles, because beagles are just very malleable, and it's, you know, they're the best dog to breed for animal testing because you can do a lot to them and they don't really push back. And the Tennessee walking horse is a bit like that as well. They're incredibly resilient breed. But the walk gait really means that they can really be exploited in their gait because they don't have a moment of suspension. So you don't see that lameness in the same way you would a trot. And they can hold up. And they basically live their lives on stall rest because they don't get turned out with these on their feet. So they can show. They can be, yeah. I mean, some of these horses will be in the show ring being soared continuously for over a decade.
Who sponsors these shows?
There have been a lot of corporate sponsors in the past. This year, the leading sponsor at the show was Jack Daniels.
Do you mean like the organization?
Jack Daniels.
That's the way to go in. is to-
Corporate sponsors.
Yeah, that's the way. But what is the money? Yeah, your question.
So the money,
It's like raining, isn't it, kind of?
Is it like really big money, or is it like actually not that big money? It's just kind of a culture thing.
$50,000, $200,000 for these horses
But
is the sort of sale. It's, I mean,
what
define
would they
big
really
money.
cost?
There's a lot of big money in the horse industry in the United States.
Okay.
So, you know, this is a very small group of people who are involved in this. When I asked one of the main owners, who's actually a veterinarian, why they do this, and when pushed, you know, 25 minutes into our conversation, I'm like, yes, I understand, but then why do you do this? I understand, but why do you do this? And finally he got frustrated with me and he said, why is an addict an addict? And I thought, there it is, isn't it? Why is an addict an addict?
Or like abuse, right?
And
it continues.
And it is. It's very much so. So I sort of liken it to one of the children's beauty contests mixed with monster trucks. And if you somehow meld those two together, you have the big lick, where you have children dressed up in sequins on top of these horses with these incredibly smooth gaits that have been just incredibly soared, and people just playing with their feet to try and get them higher and putting more weights on and putting more chemicals on, and to create this spectacle really that is just shocking. So that, but to your point, Janet, it's been a long road. We did have a rulemaking that was all passed and in place twice. We've done this. So in 2017, the Horse Protection Act, there were amendments to it. It all got passed through USDA, and well, you would think. It was set to be implemented, but it was unfortunately at the very end of the Obama administration, and when the Trump administration came in, they pulled it back, and our organization sued USDA and said, nope, you can't do that. This was, not legal to withdraw the rule. And so they said, okay, well, we'll implement a new rule. So years we worked together, implement a new rule. The new rule was passed. It all went to public comment, lawmaking. Everybody agreed on it. And we work with American Veterinary Association through American Equine Practitioners and the American Horse Council, and in coalition with ASPCA and Animal Wellness Institute, all collectively in a coalition to work on this. And so all the rulemaking came, passed, and it banned the stacks and chains. So we were so excited. And then the Trump administration came in again and withdrew the rule. So now they couldn't actually withdraw it. That wasn't entirely true. They didn't withdraw it. They put a pause on all new legislation. So it sat, and it's sitting now. It's supposed to be implemented in February 2026, but the swearers, as we call them, the Tennessee walking horse industry, took to the courts. They went to federal court. They found somebody in Texas, even though they found an owner in Texas who was willing to go forward to a judge in Texas who was favorable to such things. They dismantled a lot of the protections that were passed in the rulemaking. And, but nonetheless, what does remain is pulling the industry self-policing away, so puts all of the policing under USDA. We will see if that rule gets implemented, but there's a lot of pushback in the industry. There are other groups who are concerned, a lot of farrier type. If we could just eliminate the pads and chains, it would be great, but we can't get buy-in from the whole horse industry to eliminate pads and chains.
I just have a really quick question. Is this practice only happening in this country, one? And two, how long has it been in practice? And who came up with it?
Good questions. So it is, Tennessee walking horse is an American breed, and they do have international registry, and they claim that they have an international following. But the Tennessee walking horse is also used for flat shot. There's a large amount of people who do not do this with their Tennessee walking horses. And so I think that part of the breed is very much celebrated around the world. This is really focused in Tennessee and the surrounding states.
Was it cart horses? Because there's also isn't there a piece of there's an African American type? How does that come into that with the
Single footing. I used to live in Central Texas,
Okay.
We would have groups of 200 guys, black guys coming down the street, single footing, Tennessee walker, etc. But they didn't do that.
Yeah.
No, they didn't do that. So they were practicing the game, and that was a really interesting history because you've heard of the 40 acres and a mule thing. So Central Texas, where we lived outside of Austin, just on the east side of Austin, was one of those areas. Basically, what happened is after the Civil War, the US government wanted to pacify the Comanches. They managed to keep the whites basically out of Texas for 300 years because they were such good cavalry. And the US government didn't have the money, they were bankrupt after the Civil War. They came up, but the slaves had been freed, said 40 acres and mules will give you 40 acres in Comanche country. If you're still there, and a mule, if you're still there in 10 years, maybe we'll come in with some infrastructure. And so they brought that tradition with them from the plantations because, of course, why do you want these gated horses, which used to be transport horses in Europe and basically disappeared from Europe, but they're in the Americas, why? And they're in the South, why? Because on those enormous plantations that they used to have, the overseers would go around sort of deciding who to whip, whatever, and assessing the crop on these gated horses, which are very smooth, because they would be on them all day. Who was training them, of course? The slaves. So when those slaves were freed slaves were given the land grants, they of course brought that tradition with them, and it's now, if you like, a sort of transplanted semi-indigenous tradition within Central Texas. But as an English bloke, it kind of blew my mind when I first saw them all coming past my house. But I didn't see, there was nothing like that going on. And I actually went and wrote some journalistic pieces on them because it was just such an interesting thing. And so I think you're right. It is a very core sort of extremist.
It is.
Thing.
And there are terrible training practices in all disciplines. So it's not as if, and the Horse Protection Act isn't to eradicate terrible training practices. This is really to end the cruelty, this intentional infliction of pain, which is very different from just being abusive or reckless or all of the other things. But this is very specific to the intentional infliction of pain in order to create a gate. But I will be available for questions this evening.
Everybody who has presented and continues to present will be here. And I'm going to introduce the person who's hosting lunch in a moment. We are living in, whatever your political persuasion, we are living in an environment and a society right now where all of these issues are escalating and where sympathy and a desire to alter these things that we're talking about are going in the wrong direction. The one thing that a lot of us have found is, ironically, through philanthropy, through foundations and funding, we can do the advertising, we can do the promotion, we can bring people together to educate them about what is really happening. Because people are not listening, some of the people that we're working against, they're not listening to science either. But philanthropy and philanthropists can turn the tide. They can provide sanctuary, they can provide resources, they can provide the level of advertising that we need in order to provide more resources and services. I'm working with one person right now with a significant foundation, and they've made a dramatic difference with homeless and abandoned horses and mules. But I see it over and over again also working in shelter. If we have the money, we can do a lot of counter attacks.
Well, and with like experience, right? So it's like money, but then like I'm hearing you say feelings and logic are going, like science is going out of the table, right? Like, so they want us to operate in fear. So it's like, yeah, the money, but then also how do you capture those things that do create that mirrored experience that then it resonates in our bodies so that it will impact the change.
And it does take a massive amount of money to continue with federal protections. The Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority has budgeted $3.8 million in their budget for next year alone just to defend the federal court challenges that they are facing, to try and get people who are trying to dismantle the act that protects these horses. $3.8 million for 1 year just to defend it.
You need legal scholars. I mean, you need attorneys who are going to take these cases to court and keep it out there and keep it out there. And the universities. What you're doing within your university, I mean, you're reaching a whole lot of students. What you're doing, with the tribes, it's an impact, and I hope that by us coming together here, I mean, we're not finding solutions, but at least it's raising awareness, and of all the organizations that are working on things, and what you're doing, trying to reach people with a whole new attitude about the industry, and creating educational opportunities. When empathy is a dirty word, we're in a lot of trouble, That's why I just...
Your point about philanthropy is very good. The person that you're referring to, that same philanthropist, I wouldn't be here were it not for that same person.
Right. And everything that's going to come out of you being here,
right.
And Temple being here.
And, Pets and Horse World didn't really exist. Yeah. And your point about, you said quite casually, Jack Daniels sponsors that event, and then went on to talk about it. That's the key to the solution right there. So philanthropy is partly reaching out to actual philanthropists, but they can be hard to find and reach, and they tend to be quite private and so on. Or it's about reaching out to sponsors, and so it's very interesting. So if the people who are doing the soaring have the intelligence to try and get Jack Daniels on site because it's a Tennessee thing, it's very interesting. I've had years in activism, and it's always a good idea to try and play the same game.
Yes, yes.
So, for example, why aren't you going to Jack Daniels?
Yeah, we are. We have a corporate,
brands.
and we do. We have a corporate outreach department that does things like that. So,
not
Jack
just to say,
Daniels
please
was.
withdraw your funding, but say,
Yeah.
please, would you fund this?
Exactly, exactly,
Right, yeah.
and that is absolutely essential. There can be times that these things are always so complicated. So, some of these brands can be connected through other political entities. However, Jack Daniels just came on this year. It was their first year as a sponsor. They took over from another major alcohol brand. So we are exploring ways to reach out to them, but it's absolutely true. And we've had amazing response.
Yeah, I was just going to say, go to their competitors.
Right.
Well, they're the ones who, they're the ones who went bankrupt and gave up their sponsorship. But yes, exactly.
Big money bourbon makers.
And that is essential. And if there are smaller organizations that need to do work like that as well, we do have a big sort of corporate brand department that can help and that has research and understanding about how to influence brands.
I'd love to have some kind of breakout group or.
We're gonna have
brainstorm
plenty
session
of
about it.
breakout
Yeah.
right
So
now.
I think